Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me for Before You Fly, Check the Map, Episode 2, Beginner's Guide to Getting Your Drone Off the Ground. My name is Erica Cooley, and I will be your co-host along with Greg Reverdiau, co-founder of the Pilot Institute for today's episode. A little background on myself. I am an FAA certified Part 107 remote pilot since 2017 with experience in automated flight planning and aerial photogrammetry using UAS technologies for everything from construction to aerial cinematography. I am also the content marketing manager at Aloft, formerly known as Kitty Hawk, responsible for keeping the drone community current on how to leverage technology to fly with compliance and safety. Now I'll hand it over to Greg to tell you a little bit about his background and guide you through the essential steps to safely and compliantly operate your drone in the National Airspace System.
Thank you, Erica. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to, everyone on the call today. And before we get into all the details, I kind of want to give you a little bit of background about me and why you should listen to what I'm going to tell you about over the next 15 minutes or so. I'm the founder and the lead instructor for Pilot Institute. As of this morning, when I checked all the data, we have 137,000 and change students in our system. I'm a certified flight instructor by trade. I'm a commercial pilot for airplane, but I'm also a remote pilot, and I've been teaching remote pilots all over the country for quite a while now, over 40,000 of them, as a matter of fact. I've got about 20 years of experience in the flight training industry, and I'm also an FAA Fast Team representative. I'm a drone pro, and I'm an FAA industry partner. So that means that I work closely with the FAA to help provide content for people just like you to help them understand all of these topics. So today's topic, I want to talk about what the different rules are to fly your drones in the United States. This is always a bit of a confusing topic, so we're going to go over, there's two different types of rules. I'm going to talk to you specifically about one type, which is flying for recreational purposes. We're going to talk about the registration requirement because this is kind of an important one, and we'll talk about something called trust as well. And then I'm going to give you, a bit of an overview of what it takes to fly for commercial purposes, although this is not the topic for this presentation, so I'm not going to go into a ton of details. But let's go over the two different sets of rules that are in place in the United States to fly your drone. And the first one is very generic. It's called Part 107. Why is it called Part 107? It's something that you may have heard. It's called Part 107 because, the regulation lives in the Code of Federal Regulation under, you guessed it, Part 107. Some people call it the Drone Pilot Certificate or the Commercial Drone Regulation. And while it's true, Part 107 is really, you got to think about it as the overall set of rules that are in the United States to fly your drone. In general, you follow Part 107, except the FAA has created this tiny little piece of exemption where you can fly your drone for recreational purposes under a different set of rules. So we have Part 107, which is the overall overreaching regulation by the FAA, but there's also this little section called 44809. It's from the US Code, and it's called 44809, and it's an exemption to fly your drone for recreational purposes. So I'm going to focus on that today. I want to tell you about what does it take in order to fly your drone for recreational purposes. And in order to do this, you need to follow 9 simple rules. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm going to go over each of them and kind of explain what it means. If you don't follow all of these rules, if you don't meet the requirements for all of these rules, automatically you're going to fall under Part 107, which is much more complex, much more difficult to get into because you need to take an exam and you need to study for a long time. So there's a lot of things that you need to do to operate under Part 107. So you need to do everything you can to stay under the recreational rules because, that's the easiest. And what it means is the first rule is you have to fly strictly for recreational purposes. And this may sound simple on paper, but it's a bit complicated for certain situations. Everything that I'm going to talk about right now, all that matters is the intent of your flight. What is the intent of the flight? When you take the drone out of the box and you put it on the table and you set it up and you're about to take off, what is the intent of the flight? As long as the intent of the flight is for recreational purposes, and you're good to go. You meet the requirement right here of this first rule. What it means is, I'll give you a bunch of examples. You're recording your kids. They're playing in the backyard. That's recreational purposes. You go out to the park to fly your drone and just do a bunch of loops and do whatever it is. That's recreational. You're filming yourself with your drone during a review for a brand new phone. Let's say you have a YouTube channel where you're going to put that footage and you're using drone footage. No longer recreational, because now the purpose of this flight was to do this video for your YouTube channel, and maybe your channel is monetized, then in this case that falls under Part 107. Anytime we start to introduce money into the picture, then it's going to be Part 107. Although, with that being said, the exchange of money is not required. It's not always a requirement. So for example, I love to give this example because it's very controversial. If you decide to take your drone up to go check the gutters at your house and or your neighbor's house and take a look at inside the gutters, it's technically not a flight for recreational purposes. I know it sounds a little bit far-stretched, but it's to give you an idea of, what the difference between the two is. If you're flying, for example, for your church, that's another example. You may not get paid. You do this voluntarily for the church so they can put it on their website. That is not a recreational flight. That requires Part 107. All right? So step number 1, you have to stay recreational in order to fly your drone under this set of rules. Rule number 2 is going to be community-based organization guidelines. Now, what in the world is community-based organization? Also known as CBOs. CBOs are organizations out there, and there is one right here which is called Flight Test Community Organization. And Flight Test, for example, has a set of rules on their website. They are an aero modeling agency, and they help people fly their drones and fly their fixed-wing aircraft. In this case, you have to follow their guidelines. So the FAA in this case is asking you to pick a CBO. There's others like the AMA, for example, that's another one. And then you're going to have to pick their rules and follow their rules. And this is always a bit of a confusion for people that just get started. What is a CBO? Well, go to this website, look for the Flight Test Community Association, and then you'll be able to find their rules pretty much right away. All right. Rule number 3. Rule number 3 is maintain visual line of sight. What does this mean? It means that at all time when you fly, the drone has to be within visual line of sight. You have to be able to see the drone while you're operating the aircraft. Now, what I did not say is I didn't say that you have to stare at the drone as it's flying all the time. You can look down at your controller, but you have to, if you look up, if you get your head up, you have to be able to see where the aircraft is located. And the reason the FAA wants you to do this is primarily because, well, they want you to be able to see other drones, people on the ground. Maybe a helicopter flying at low altitude coming around the corner. They want to make sure that you can do all these things and avoid colliding with a helicopter or low-flying aircraft. You're going to need to have a visual observer in some cases, and that visual observer is the person next to you who's going to be able to, well, be your eyes in the sky. This is the case if you fly FPV. FPV is this technology where you can put goggles on and you have the ability to essentially look at what the camera is looking at as you're flying. Now, when you do that, you have to have a visual observer flying next to you. So that was rule number 3. Rule number 4 is a pretty important one, which is do not interfere, and you have to give way to manned aircraft. This is important for a lot of different reasons. Manned aircraft are typically flying pretty fast. Some can be flying pretty low, like helicopters, and they're not going to be able to see you. You will be able to see them, but they're not going to be able to see you. You have to stay out of their way, and that's the rule right here. This is a pretty simple one. I don't really have to say much more than that. You have to give way and not interfere with manned aircraft operation. The next one, number 5, is getting authorization to fly in certain type of airspace. It's called controlled airspace, okay? And controlled airspace, you know how you're going to be able to find that out? Well, you're going to use Aloft, or you're going to use B4UFLY. And Erica is going to be able to show this to us in a minute. She's going to show you an example of how we use B4UFLY to actually find what controlled airspace is, where it is, and how you actually get approval. Now, I do want to mention in here that you should not call the air traffic controller or the airport or whatever it is to get approval. Everything, when it's required, is going to be done right here, straight through the app, and then you don't have to actually call someone who's going to be, dealing with actual airplanes flying in the airspace. Rule number 6, if you're flying in uncontrolled airspace or away from airports, think about it this way, you can fly up to 400 feet without having to get approval, without having to call the air traffic controller or call the tower or the airport. You basically can fly without getting any approval. And again, Erica is going to show you how that works in the app and where you find that information. Rule number 7. This is a fairly new one. This was put in place last summer in 2021. And this one has to do with what's called trust. Trust is the recreational unmanned safety test. And this was put in place by the FAA to help people learn all the rules that we're talking about right here. It's a very quick and easy and free test or training that you can take on the FAA website. And at the end of it, you'll get a certificate. And that certificate of completion says that you've completed the training and you're good to go. This is a requirement in the regulation, so don't skip that. It's free training. It's free. It's quick. It takes about 30 minutes to complete, probably even less. And you can't fail it. And you also only have to do it once. It's a once and done kind of thing. And the good news is Pilot Institute is a trust provider. You can go to trust.pilotinstitute.com. You can create an account there for free, do all the training, and then basically be done and be legal to go fly. So number 8 is we're almost done. Number 8, you have to register your drone. How do you register your drone? You have to go on the FAA website. It's called FAAdronezone.faa.gov. And I'm going to stop you right there. This is the only place where you register your drone. Okay? This is the only place where you register your drone. It's one registration per person. It's $5 for 3 years. And then you're going to get a number, and you put that number on your drone. It's kind of like a license plate if you think about it. Okay, that number is going to go on your drone. It's got to be visibly marked on the drone so the FAA can find it if the drone is somewhere on the ground or wherever it is. And that's it. Really, it's really that simple. Like I said, it's $5 for 3 years. If you pay more than $5 for 3 years, you're in the wrong spot. There are places that will try to make you pay for a lot more money that are actually not associated with the FAA. So if you don't see FAA.gov at the end of the address, you're in the wrong place. All right? And I'm going to give you a free tip right here. You can get free stickers from us by going to pilotinstitute.com/free. You can give us the information. We'll print the stickers. We'll ship them to you. You can see them right here on the side, and then you can put them on your drone and be legal. So the last thing that's in here, it's not really a bullet point per se, but it's something that the FAA mentions, which is do not do any dangerous operation. And that can encompass a lot of different things. Do not operate your drone in a dangerous manner. All right? Do not interfere with emergency responses, for example, or law enforcement activities. Don't fly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Don't fly over forest fires. All of these things are considered dangerous operation. They're not specifically named just like that in the FAA regulation because there's a lot of different things that can fall under dangerous operation. So be very careful with all of this. Now, before I hand you over to Erica, I want to tell you about a free course that we have available. It's called Recreational Flying Made Easy. We talk about this and many more things. It's about an hour and a half long, and it's going to give you all the information you need to be safe. And like I said, it's free. This is something that we do for the community. We want to help you fly safely and not get in trouble with the FAA. So with that being said, Erica, all yours. Let's go ahead and show them how we use Aloft or B4UFLY in order to find information and then get approval.
Thank you, Greg, for sharing your expertise on drone testing for Recreational in Part 107, in addition to drone registration tips. All are essential to take to ensure you are flying compliantly and safely in the National Airspace System. Now I'd like to demo how to check the National Airspace on the B4UFLY app to see if your operations are safe and compliant to fly. Here on my screen, we are looking at the B4UFLY platform on desktop and mobile. If you haven't already, I recommend you download the B4UFLY app available on Android and iOS. You can also view the B4UFLY platform on desktop at beforeyoufly.aloft.ai. The B4UFLY platform updates in real time, so I invite you to follow along on your mobile or desktop device if you'd like. Today I will be demoing how to understand the difference between controlled and uncontrolled airspace on the B4UFLY app, and then demonstrating how to apply for LAANC authorization for access to controlled airspace on the Aloft app, as well as how to submit a notify and fly for operations in uncontrolled airspace. B4UFLY is a public-private partnership between Aloft and the FAA. We are the sole provider of the B4UFLY app, which is a free situational awareness tool for all drone pilots, recreational, commercial, and really anyone who wants to learn more about the National Airspace System. It is an essential tool to reference in your pre-flight checklist before every flight to ensure that your operations are compliant and you understand the airspace you will be operating in before takeoff. So for the purposes of today's demonstration, I am going to look up the Golden Gate Park area in San Francisco. We have that pulled up on my phone as well as in San Francisco here on desktop. So we'll zoom out a little bit. This area kind of gives a nice visual of the different types of airspace you might come across on the B4UFLY platform. So what we're looking at here is different circles indicating different types of airspace. Anywhere that you see this gray color, there are no circle overlays, that indicates uncontrolled airspace, meaning you do not need an authorization to operate in that area. Anywhere you see red is restricted or prohibited. Sometimes those can be around military facilities, national parks, things like that. And we'll go in more depth into parks and things like that in an upcoming webinar. But for the purposes of today, let's look at this blue circle we see here in the Dali City area. So we'll drop our pin there. Come over here and do this on desktop as well. So what you'll see is when your pin is dropped in an area where it is controlled airspace, scroll up. We'll see here in the notification bar that it says UAS facility map, permissible altitude for authorization 100 feet. So that's letting you know that you are in controlled airspace, but you can get near real-time authorization up to 100 feet AGL by simply applying through the app. You can also do this on desktop. You'll see over here on the right that we also have that option. You can click the Get LAANC button on desktop and apply as well. And I dropped my pin in a little bit of a different location here in this controlled airspace. So you can see this one actually says 250 feet. But we will go through the app and you can click Get, or you can click More, and that'll give just a little bit more information of what I just stated. So auto approval available up to 100 feet, further coordination available up to 400 feet, and this airspace is surrounding KSFO in the San Francisco area. And in a upcoming webinar, we will have one on further coordination authorizations, because that is a very interesting topic that we get a lot of questions on as well. But for the purposes of today, we will give a demo of a authorization through the Aloft app. So what you'll want to do is you will click Get LAANC, and then it will open up the Aloft app, and we'll go to the Golden Gate Park area. We'll come down here and you'll see there are grid squares here in the Aloft app that show you where the ceiling height is for auto authorization. So we'll drop our pin here in this 100 foot. You can see it says 100. So that is similar to the area that we were in. And if you click More, you can get that same information that we were looking at on the B4UFLY platform. We'll click the Get Authorization, which is this little rectangle with a check mark in it. And then you're here to select. We'll select Part 107 Commercial or Section 44809 Recreational. For the purposes of today, we'll do Commercial. And you'll see now we have a few options. So if we would like to extend this shape of our polygon to cover our entire operational area, we can just simply click the corners here and pull the shape down to fit our fully intended operational area. Something to note is if you were, let's say we were in this 250 foot grid above or below the area where we're applying for LAANC, and we moved into this 100 foot grid, it would automatically take this auto approval ceiling height down to 100 feet. So it's kind of something important to designate, that if you are in an area where the auto ceiling height changes, you'll need to adhere to the one that is like of the highest height, which would be 100 feet in this case. And then here on the bar here, it shows the same thing. So we'll slide the bar up to 100 feet. We'll say eligible for auto approval up to 100 feet. Our polygon shape looks good. That's the full intended operational area. We'll click the next button. Now we can give some time frame on our intended operation. It's really nice. You can schedule this out up to 90 days in advance of your intended operation. And also, as of this past summer, you can apply for LAANC at night, which we do have a blog on that, some tips for operating at nighttime. But for the purposes of today, let's just say I have a 1 hour flight. And it's going to start now, and I'll go through the afternoon. So some more information here that you can read about LAANC, how many overlapping operations you can have, and how close they need to be. And then you can click the next button. And so we'll see here that I do have auto approval for up to 100 feet surrounding KSFO for my intended operational time. So scroll down, click next, give some of my information, and click agree and submit. Awesome. So that's a text message that comes through that lets us know that we are now auto approved. And if we click, so we can see now on the map here that our LAANC authorization is in that same polygon grid that we just applied for, but also you'll see it here in your notification bar. It says my name, this operator, the max height, and then the duration of our operations. And then also to note, why this isn't appearing on the B4UFLY platform on desktop is because we are on the Aloft app now. So a lot of questions that we get is like, what's the difference between Aloft and the B4UFLY app? Which is a great question. Aloft is a UAS service supplier. We're one of, I think, about 16 UAS service suppliers in the US. We're actually the leading. We're currently processing about 70% of all the LAANC authorizations in the US every month. And we are currently on the left here on the mobile side, you're seeing the Aloft app. And so this is connected to my personal information, so it will only show on my personal account that's logged in on Aloft. That's why it's not showing on the B4UFLY platform where everybody could see this information. But that is a nice lead in to a exciting new feature that we launched in summer of 2021 that I'd love to demo today called Notify and Fly. I'm going to close this out, go back to the B4UFLY app. So now that we're looking at that same area we were just applied for LAANC in, I'm going to show you how to apply for, or how to submit a Notify and Fly. So let's move our pin out here, out of controlled airspace. Perfect. So now you'll see it says clear for takeoff. You get that green notification, and instead of showing, let me move this back once more just to give you guys a nice visual. When we're in controlled airspace, you'll see that it says get LAANC and it says controlled airspace. And same here on the mobile side, this little blue icon in the right corner says get LAANC, kind of mirroring both of the interfaces on mobile and desktop here. But when we click out of controlled airspace into uncontrolled airspace, those icons change, and they change to the Notify and Fly icon here in the right-hand corner, which is a square with a little arrow on mobile. And then on desktop, you'll see it's that same icon, but says Notify and Fly next to it. So what Notify and Fly is it is a option that you can, a feature within the app that you can submit a operation in uncontrolled airspace. So it's good to insinuate that this is not a replacement for LAANC. This is a feature intended currently for uncontrolled airspace operations by drone pilots. But it was really, to rewind it back a little bit, this feature was incepted through some data analysis that our team did with a feature that we released in 2020 of crowdsourcing. So what crowdsourcing added is, I'll show you here on the mobile app. So you can see this submit data for this location. That's an option that we added for people to submit if an advisory was potentially missing from the map. Let's say there was a bird sanctuary and there was not an advisory there, and that area was protected from drone flights. Somebody could submit that there as well. Or if you click that blue question mark, you can flag a current advisory if there was some update that needed to be made to it. So it's very interesting. We received thousands of submissions to date in this feature that we added. But one of the most interesting things that we observed in the data analysis was that many drone pilots were submitting notifications using this feature for their operations in uncontrolled airspace, which currently is not required. You're only required to submit for a LAANC authorization if you're in controlled airspace to make your operations compliant. So this was a very interesting reflection that our team had on pilots really taking it on themselves to try to notify others that they are operating in the area to make the airspace safer. So our wonderful team at Aloft created the Notify and Fly feature, which I will demo for you now. So since we're in uncontrolled airspace, and just repeat once more, that's because we're in an area that does not have a color overlay. So we are able to submit for a Notify and Fly. We'll do it here on mobile. So I'm going to click this blue circle with the arrow icon. And then you'll see this is a little definition of what I just stated of what Notify and Fly is. It is fully anonymous as well, which is a nice feature that you don't have to give up any of your private information to submit information to the map. So that is something that people really like. There also, it states here again that this is not a replacement for LAANC or getting an authorization through the FAA's drone zone. This is purely voluntary for submitting in uncontrolled airspace. So we'll click next. And here there are a few options for the type of flight. So recreational and commercial are pretty self-explanatory, but we also have a government and a first responder option, which is really exciting for a lot of life-saving operations that are done with drones all over the country every day for first responders or government agencies to be able to notify, hey, we're doing really important work here. Make sure you're aware in the airspace if you're flying just for fun or for a commercial operation to make right away, because there is very important work being done with drones. So for the purposes of today's demo, we'll do a commercial Notify and Fly, and we'll click File Flight. And here is a little bit of information that will reflect on the Notify and Fly on the map. That will be your start time, which currently this is the first iteration of Notify and Fly. So it does start at the time that you submit this. In the future, there will be many updates to the Notify and Fly, which will allow pre-scheduling of Notify and Fly, similar to how LAANC is now. But currently, it is the current start time that you're submitting your Notify and Fly, and the duration is up to 60 minutes. So again, something we are working to update in the future would be longer periods of time as to give that real accuracy on the duration of the drone operation, but currently it is 60 minutes. And if you had a longer operation, we would just recommend that at the end of that 60-minute duration that you submit a second Notify and Fly to the map. The ceiling height is set to 400 feet, which is for uncontrolled airspace. the maximum ceiling height that you can operate your drone at. And then as we selected earlier, the type would be commercial. So we'll click File Flight. Awesome. And then if we zoom in, you can see we have a blue circle around our operational area. And also something that you might have just observed is since we're in that area that has a notify and fly now, it changed from that green, you're good to fly notification to caution. There might be some advisories to review. And as we can see, here is our drone flight area notify and fly. And we can see it here also on the desktop version. It gives all that information that we went over, as well as a randomly generated ID. So that is what I wanted to demonstrate here on the Before You Fly and the Aloft platform in terms of important steps that drone pilots should take before taking flight off of the ground. So with that, I will open up our Q&A. Greg and I are going to hop on, and we're happy to take some of your guys' questions. All right, give Greg a moment to hop on. Thank you everyone for all your great questions and engagement during the presentation. So many good questions, and we'll try to get to them all. We have about 25-30 minutes for fielding questions.
There you
go. Awesome.
There you go.
There's Greg. Awesome. Thanks for joining me, Greg.
Hey, you're very welcome, Erica. Thank you.
Awesome. So we received lots of good questions. It was awesome to see you on the chat there, fielding some of those as well. So our first question that I wanted to give to you, Greg, is from Ron Schuler. And the question is, I'm in an area that has no restrictions where I am free to fly Part 107. How do I apply in the app, if possible, for flights over 400 feet, or how high can I get approval for?
So 400 feet, that's an interesting question because there's a difference between airspace approval, which is what Aloft provides, and an FAA waiver. And an FAA waiver is a document that the FAA is going to provide in order to bypass the regulation. Flying over 400 feet is a waiver, not an airspace authorization. So you can't do that in Aloft. You will have to submit that on the FAA Drone Zone website. And you can create an account. You should have an account already if you've registered your drone under Part 107. And in there, you will see that there's what's called an operational waiver. An operational waiver is where they'll ask you a bunch of questions, one of them being, are you going to fly over 400 feet? And then in there, you can say yes, and then submit the paperwork to get the approval to fly over 400 feet.
Great. Thanks for that, Greg. That was great. So the next question, and I will maybe take this, and if Greg would like to chime in at the end, that would be awesome. We have a question from Waldorf Nelson, and it is, if you have an authorization from the FAA to take off within a controlled airspace, why won't my drone take off? This is a really great question that we receive a lot, and I'm sure Greg does as well. Most likely that would be geofencing if you're flying within the DJI platforms. And what that entails is that their geofences do not match up to the FAA's UAS facility maps. So you may have authorization in that controlled airspace, and that's great. You did what you needed. You will need to go through DJI's unlock feature to be able to open up that airspace for you in order to open up your operations. I had a gravel mine that I did some surveying for a couple of years, and it was right next to a small municipal airport, and I had to do that every time to unlock the drone, even though that is not controlled airspace. It was Class G airspace, which a little plug for our episode 1. If you're interested in learning more about small airports, municipal, that are in Class G airspace, that might be a good one for you to look at if that's a type of airspace that you operating in. Yeah, awesome. Oh, and this was an interesting question that I was wondering if you knew the answer to, Greg. Are county jails restricted airspace normally? This was from Don Brown.
So yes, typically they will show up as an area where you can't fly. Primarily the reason is because they don't want drones flying over and dropping drugs into the or dropping other objects, which unfortunately happens. So typically county jails are going to be restricted areas in terms of airspace, and then in terms of flying, taking off and landing around the area. So yeah, be careful with flying over these. You can definitely get in trouble.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the question too, Don. So second question, which I thought was interesting, that I wanted to mention, a partnership that we had at Aloft. John Brown asked, the Florida State Fairgrounds say they do not allow drones without written permission to fly over. Would that not be in line with the FAA? So it's a really good question. Last year, we did a partnership with the city of San Francisco to enter all of their parks into the Before You Fly platform, because they have local regulations against takeoff and landing in all parks in the city of San Francisco. So this is kind of one of those scenarios that you mentioned here with the Florida State Fairgrounds. They have their own regulations that prohibit drones from operating in their area. It would not be per se against the FAA's regulations, but it would be against local ordinance. So you need to be, mindful of, the different layers of operational protocols that you need to take.
And if I can clarify, Erica, on this, if they are restricting airspace entry, then that's a bit of an issue because only the FAA has control of the airspace. The only thing that a municipality can do and local government can do is restrict takeoff and landing from their property. So depending on the way that it's written, it may be something that you need to contact the local municipality and let them know that, they can't restrict airspace. If you need help with this, we're happy to help. We deal with this on a regular basis at Pilot Institute. So you can send us an email and we can help you craft a letter or something to help the municipalities. Sometimes the people that create those rules don't always know what they can and can't do in terms of restrictions, and we're happy to work with them. Most of the time, it's an easy fix, so yeah, we're here to help.
Great, thank you for that. Let's see, a few more questions. Tony Marino had a great question about Class E2 airspace, and we're hoping to have a webinar just on that airspace specifically, because we do receive a lot of questions as well on that one in the future.
And I think I saw Tony's question, and I know we'll probably dig deeper into this in future episodes, but Tony, I think some areas have a Class E2 that is not part of LAANC, and I think that's what you're looking at. In which case, Aloft cannot cannot provide approval, so you'll have to go through the drone zone to do that.
Great, and we already have. So a good question here from Alex Green. It says, if I already have a subscription to Aloft, do I just use it instead of Before You Fly, or should I use both? So it's a great question. The map is identical on the Aloft and the Before You Fly platform. The only difference you'll see is that you will be able to submit for a LAANC authorization in the Aloft platform, whereas that's not a feature that's possible in Before You Fly, because that is just purely a free situational awareness tool, whereas we are a UAS service supplier. So that's a great question. You can definitely do all of your pre-flight planning and airspace checking on the Aloft app, but you also can do that on the Before You Fly platform. We received an interesting question about TFRs. So the question is, to ask for permission to fly in a TFR, do I contact the phone number in the TFT, or I think it means TFR, or the FAA drone helpline? On that one, Greg?
Good. That's a difficult one. Getting approval to fly in a TFR is very difficult. You do have to get in contact with the agency that's in charge of that TFR. So if there's a phone number in the NOTAM that issues the TFR, then that's who you should contact to get in. Now, there are some TFRs where you're not going to get access. The Super Bowl TFR, for example, is going to be very difficult. Any presidential or called VIP TFRs, you're not going to be able to get in. But some of them you will, like if there's a hurricane, for example, you should be able to get in there to help with search and rescue, for example. So yeah, contact the people that are in charge of that TFR specifically.
Great, thank you for that answer. A follow-up from Alex Green: if you fly recreationally, then you would not need a Part 107 certification, right? I'll let you take that one since you had such good answers to that in your presentation.
That is correct. Yeah, Part 107 is only if you want to fly for anything other than recreational purposes. So, yep.
Awesome. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. Tony Marino also sent in a question prior about if you had a preference on what type of SD cards to use and why for drone flights.
Personally, I'm biased and I don't work for them, but I love the SanDisk. They have an extreme version, and then they have the other one. I know the colors, but I don't remember what they look like. There's a gold color and a dark black and red color. They're bulletproof. We've been using them in the studio forever, and so that would be my preference. SanDisk. Don't go with the very cheap stuff. Make sure that you understand the numbers on the cards, and this is a whole presentation on its own. The speed at which you can record. Make sure you have the right category and the right numbers. But yeah, SanDisk has always been a win for us.
For that. And I think we'll do one more question to see if there's any other ones that came in. All right. So for our final question, Joshua Remmer asked, some areas require 24 to 72 hour notice before flight. Example, Traverse City, Michigan. Would the UAV pilot have to submit a test flight plan, or can you check for those types of restrictions ahead of time?
So, yeah, so certain areas, the one that typically are not part of LAANC, will require prior approval. You'll need to do further coordination with the FAA on the FAA Drone Zone website. It takes sometimes a lot more than 24 hours. I would recommend submitting those at least 2 or 3 days in advance, possibly even more if you can. What I've noticed recently coming from the FAA, from some of the flights that we've done in those areas, is that they will give you more than 1 day approval. In the past, they could only give you the 1 day that you requested, and now it seems like they are expanding this. At least they do for my airport, so hopefully they're starting to do this nationwide. So yeah, you don't need to submit really anything other than your request to fly in that area, but keep in mind that that information goes from you to the FAA. The FAA typically sends it to the air traffic control to review, and then they send it back to the FAA, and then the FAA does the final approval. So it takes time for all of this to happen. So give them enough time, otherwise your request is going to get canceled pretty much right away.
Great, thank you for that. Well, I think with that, I'll see if, Greg, did you have any closing remarks that you wanted?
No, I really appreciate having me on the show. I think this has been a great experience. I hope the listeners and the watchers learned something. This is always my goal, is teaching something new. So I hope they get this, and I hope we'll be again seeing you on the next show or on future shows. That was awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you so much, Greg. This episode has all been recorded, so the live playback will be shared with you guys after to watch on demand, and hope to see everyone in future episodes. And again, thank you, Greg. Hey, great day.